Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Saying bye, bye, bye to BC. Okay, not the members of NSYNC, but British Columbians. They're leaving this province. Nearly 70,000 last year for another part of the country. New StatsCan data this week found that for the first time in more than a decade, more people left than moved here from other provinces. Well, are you considering leaving? Call us on that. In half an hour, Brian Minter is a reason to keep your feet firmly planted here in BC. He'll take your gardening questions. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Thanks for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Our first topic today is about people leaving British Columbia. Over the last year, 68,000 people moved to other provinces. More than half of them went to Alberta. We want to hear from you on this today. Why do you think this is happening? Are you considering a move to another part of the country? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or you can hit pound 690. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca or send us a text at 236-330-2623. A closer look at this week's data from Statistics Canada tells us more about who is leaving. The rate of under 25s moving from BC to other provinces is above average. But it's not just young people. There's another spike in the numbers among people aged 65 to 95, and the rate in that age group is higher than average too. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Why do you think that is? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Now, for the many people who choose to stay here, these departures do have an impact. All Points West host Jason D'Souza spoke this week to Emily Rogers. Now, Emily is in her early 30s and lives in Victoria, and she shared how it is affecting her and her peers.
I was born and raised here. I have very few friends from high school or elementary school that continue to live here. And I think that's normal to some extent. But no one from university is here anymore. And then so many folks that I've worked with in various jobs over the years have moved away. And I went for a walk with a bunch of new mom friends this morning and told them what I was doing today. It's not a normal day. And everyone in the group was like, oh my gosh, completely. I 100% agree. And that's exactly my experience as well. And so it was interesting to hear from a group of other young moms that we're actually all having this experience and we all are noticing that everyone's moving away. And it's just not something that we're really talking about.
Yeah. Do you think it's solely and purely just the cost of living that's driving people away?
I do. When I was growing up, this was a place that people needed to leave because there weren't very many jobs. But now it's a place that people are needing to leave because they can't afford to continue to live here even while working full time. So we have jobs, but if you're not able to pay rent and feed yourself on that job, working full-time or working multiple jobs, then you have really no choice but to leave.
I wonder what you see as the potential ramifications for a generation or multiple generations to not feel like they can form community, lasting community where they live.
The ramification is that we don't... our sense of close-knit community is suffering. Yeah. I can't trust that people are going to be here in my life in a year or 2 years. And to keep investing in new relationships, it takes a lot of energy. And not to say that I won't continue to do it. But, when I'm meeting someone new, I am sort of in the back of my mind wondering, how long this person is going to be around in my community and will appreciate them and love them while they're here. But it's tough to keep going through a revolving door of meeting someone, getting to know someone, building trust, and then understandably them having to leave.
The West Coast has a stereotype, and I personally think it's an accurate one, that it can be a hard place to make friends.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're new here or if you move to a different part of the cities in BC. Does this just make it even more harder?
I mean, I would say it's a little bit of chicken and egg in that I actually wonder how much of this is part of the reason that we're bad at making friends. I think it's hard to make friends as an adult, just period. Yep. But I do think that the cost of living and sense of transience just layers on top of that. And I know, we have a bit of a reputation for being quite flaky here and, maybe not showing up for plans or whatever. But I do think that it's a little bit part of the culture because people need to leave. If you can't really trust a relationship to stick around, then it sort of gives a little bit of social license to be a little bit flaky in that relationship to begin with. And that's not a good thing, but I think it's where we're at.
That was Emily Rogers. Now, she's in her early 30s and lives in Victoria. Now, you can give us a call and tell us your own thoughts. So over the last year, 68,000 people moved to other provinces from BC. So we're asking you, why do you think that's happening? Are you considering a move to another part of Canada? We should also say that we're talking about interprovincial migration there. When it comes to immigration to BC from out of the country, that was still up at 70,000 immigrants moving to BC from outside. But when it comes to moving out of BC to other parts of the country, we want to hear from you. Why do you think that's happening? The number is 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone, by email bctoday@cbc.ca, or you can text us at 236-330-2623. Chris is joining us from Cranbrook. Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Hey, thank
Hi.
you for taking my call.
Still living in Cranbrook.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm quite a ways from the lower mainland, but BC is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
What with the taxes, like I was listening to that little promo, but she said everything that I was going to say. That BC is expensive with the taxes and even lack of health care and, housing.
You can understand why people...
immigrants are moving away, even though they want them there. Jobs are here, I think. But, they're moving away because they can't afford and they can't find any place to live.
Okay. And so what do you think can be done? You mentioned their cost of living, obviously, healthcare services. Are those the things that do need to be addressed in order to keep people wanting to live in BC?
I definitely do. I definitely do. Housing is a big one. And for some reason, I know we pay taxes, and it's supposed to go into infrastructure and all the rest of this kind of like healthcare and building hospitals and all the rest of that. But you don't see that coming. They're trying to get doctors and nurses and techies in the healthcare system with it, but it's just not working because there's no place to live, and you get stuck into a closet kind of thing.
The size of a closet. Chris, you've hit on so many things there, and trying to recruit nurses, entice healthcare workers to move to BC. We know that the health minister, Adrian Dix, has talked about that as well, trying to get more nurses to move here, not just from out of country, but from other provinces. But you raise a question of, what about housing? So that's the other part of what people might face when they do arrive in the province. So thank you very much for your call in Cranbrook, saying he can understand why people would leave. Liz is on the line in Victoria now. Hi, Liz. Are you surprised by this?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I'm 36, and a lot of people younger than me and in my age range and all ages, I hear them in Victoria just not being able to make ends meet. And it makes me frustrated because I had hopes. I used to volunteer with the BC NDP when I was younger, and I really believed they were a socialist party that was going to fight for the working class and try to keep more of the work that we do benefiting us versus going straight to landlords and bosses. And I've seen the NDP move to the right in BC. It's something that's openly talked about.
How so?
Well, they just seem to be trying to please the people in power who already have more resources than they need. I want to see real rent control, like where when one person moves out, there's a limited amount you're allowed to raise that rent. Some people call it unit-based rent control. Some people call it vacancy control. There's no reason we shouldn't have that. Someone moves out of a unit in Victoria, that unit is reposted immediately for like $500 more. And that could be stopped tomorrow if the BC NDP wanted to do it. But they don't want to upset the landlord lobby. But I'm sorry, you're not going to have workers left. You're not going to have people who can live in these communities and things are falling apart. It's time to stop pretending we don't live in late capitalism.
So you see this as a government policy issue?
Well, I see that it's something that started, it's happening all over the world. The balance of power between the working class and the capitalist class is not working anymore. We're keeping less and less of the money. We're squeezed in every direction. I think of it almost like a harvesting of cash, right? You get harvested at rent, you get harvested at the grocery store, and then your money is harvested by your boss for how much they get to keep versus how much you're paid. And it's just happening in every direction. And we need to have measures to make things more possible for people to survive.
And for
like
you, it's
transit.
rent. Yeah.
We could have free transit tomorrow. That would help people have freedom of movement. We could have vacancy control. I want to see bold progressive policies from a party that has claimed to be progressive for years.
So do you see this, Liz, as becoming an election issue?
Oh, yes. Like, this is all, what really makes me sad is that the NDP still talks progressive. So people are becoming confused. And that helps the far right recruit people. That helps people who want to blame everything on immigrants. That helps people who want to scapegoat people and appeal to racism. This is going to become a big problem because if they're talking like they are the party of the working class and they're not acting that way, people don't understand that progressive policies can work.
Okay.
And I'm a social worker and they can work.
You're a
The
social
evidence is
worker.
there.
Liz,
Yeah.
you're firmly, putting this at the feet of the government, looking ahead to what's going to happen in the election. For you personally, you're in your 30s, you work as a social worker. What's your own personal situation?
Well, I'm just very, very lucky because I live with family.
You
and
live
I
with
work
family.
I work at a place we've just unionized and we're trying to get the wages up. Most of the people who are still able to work at that place, I won't say what it's called, it's in downtown Victoria, live with family or in a home that's owned by family. If you're not really lucky and you don't live with family, and I do pay some rent, but they're very reasonable because I help with childcare, like you have to be in a special situation to survive in Victoria.
Liz,
and luckily I am.
Yeah, you are lucky that. Thank you very much. Good to have family there. Thank you very much for your call. Appreciate it. That's Liz in Victoria. Again, our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. Why do you think more people are leaving BC for other provinces? Suki is up next now in Vancouver. Hi, Suki.
Hi. I think it's not just getting your home, but even if you've got a home, the city needs to look after you. There's lots of mental health issues. We've got stairs near us on Cameron Avenue in Westside Vancouver. It's a nice area. So many people want to use those stairs for accessing the beach, for mental health, for just going for a walk. The stairs were closed by the city years ago, and nobody's done anything.
And why have they been closed?
We don't know, and people can't see a doctor. And I think the mixture between, people not being able to get a family doctor and people not being able to access public areas, that's not just waterfront for the fancy houses. It's for everybody. The stairs have been shut, and we're waiting for the city to look after them. If it's the cliff or the stairs or building. We need the city to look after the people and look after the facilities.
What do you think is needed then? I mean, so it's the city, it's municipal infrastructure is what you're talking about, but you also touched on lack of doctors?
I think they overlap because I think that, I think Vancouver is amazing. And so, but to look after the people of Vancouver, we need to have the big basics. One of them is housing, but the other one is access to normal facilities. Community centers are really great, but the access to, the areas that have been sort of systematically sort of shut off, that's no good. You need people to be able to access the beaches and the wildlife and nature because that's all part of mental health. I have no idea whether Cameron Avenue steps have been shut for years and years and years.
Okay.
But somebody needs to do something about them. And similarly, people need to be able to access, medical support and community centers, because all of that adds to a feeling of safety and being looked after. It's not just the housing, it's housing plus.
I understand, Suki. And for yourself, you live in Vancouver, where, of course, we know all of those things are at play, all those issues. Have you seen just around you people saying, yeah, I've been thinking of leaving, or, is it sustainable to stay in the city?
I mean, some of our younger friends have had to go. And
where are they gone?
Some to Alberta. Some have moved out of the country entirely. Some have moved back home because they can afford it more. But mainly in like the dog walking community, we're a really tight knit group, and we want to be able to, go on stairs, go and use sort of parks. And so the city really, it needs to be careful with its budget to really look after the ability for the public to access public space.
Okay. Suki, thank you so much. And those beach stairs are closed in Kitsilano, the west side of Vancouver. Suki, thanks so much, talking about infrastructure and municipal management of infrastructure as well to address people's needs. And she says it's a matter of mental health. So we're asking you, given this drop in interprovincial migration to BC, PEC actually saw more people leaving the province for other provinces last year than coming in. And so we're asking you, why do you think that is? And now we also should point out that the province does say that more people have moved here from other countries. Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon says BC is a great place to live, acknowledged it is facing challenges, and he says the focus right now remains on taking action to reduce costs for people, especially housing. And Kahlon also says BC saw its highest ever total migration levels on record in 2023. So that's when you include out-of-country migration. Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Wondering as well if Alberta has been calling you. You remember they had that campaign, right? Alberta is calling. Do you know anyone who's picked up the phone, who's taken up that call and moved next door? We have an email from Kalina who writes, we are a young family with one toddler. We are considering moving away from BC. We have had my daughter on wait lists for daycare since she was conceived, and we have no childcare yet. She's now almost 1.5 years old, and I have been off work for that time now. So with the cost of living and housing, both myself and my partner need to work full time. And without childcare, we can't do that. We are privileged in many ways, one being that we are homeowners, but we rent out half our home to survive and would be in serious trouble without that option. We're both post-secondary educated professionals, and I thought we made a median living, but now we cannot keep up with the cost of living and raise children, even with all we've worked hard to make. We have eaten through all our savings just to survive. Thank you for that email, Kalina, pardon me. Ben is our next caller now at Fort St. John. Hi, Ben. And I understand you actually go back and forth between BC and Alberta?
Yes, I actually live in Alberta, but I travel to BC on a daily basis, back and forth. So I'm in the province 5 days a week. So I'll bring a bit of an Alberta perspective to the conversation.
Yes.
You know what? We've always joked in Alberta for years that BC means bring cash. Because it is expensive. There's no doubt about it. Fuel, just even within an hour of where I live, is 30 to 40 cents more per liter on a regular basis. I know that housing in northeastern BC is not as expensive as the lower mainland, but it is still quite high.
Yeah.
And I don't blame people for looking at other options. I mean, where I live in Grand Prairie, you can buy a decent house in Grand Prairie for $300,000. If you're a retired couple, you can buy a one-bedroom condo in Grand Prairie for $125,000.
But, it is beautiful BC. And as you heard from our last caller in Vancouver, yes, you're surrounded with these this gorgeous environment, and that is so much of what entices people to move to British Columbia. So is that part of what you're paying for and bringing cash for?
You're paying a premium for it, obviously, for sure. But, the Grand Prairie area, I mean, you drive 20 minutes south of Grand Prairie and you got the same landscapes as you do in BC. I mean, we don't have the lakes that you guys have here for sure. But in Alberta, too, I mean, the narrative for years and years is that BC would be a great place to retire, but not a great place to live, like to raise a family.
Right.
Because of the costs. And
Right.
I mean, it's always been that way for years and years. So, I even have friends that have retired full-time in Sicamous, BC, that once every 6 or 8 weeks, they load up a 16-foot trailer and drive to Calgary and go to Costco and pick up their groceries and their supplies for 2 months.
Yeah, you can do that.
It's just too expensive.
And so, Ben, I mentioned the Alberta is Calling campaign. Have you seen anyone move there recently?
Oh, I'm seeing tons and tons of Beetle. I mean, we've always seen tons and tons of BC plates. We're only about an hour from the border in Grand Prairie.
Right.
So, I mean, we see lots of BC plates on a regular basis, but I've noticed, lots of BC plates, lots of Ontario plates, more and more in the last year. And, we're looking at, these people that are coming are economic migrants now. They can't afford to live where they work. And it's going to be a serious problem for especially the Lower Mainland going forward. If you a teacher that can't live and work there, then you're going to go elsewhere to work, and you're going to be short of teachers, paramedics. I know are a problem. They have to address the problem, but the thing is, the genie's been out of the bottle for so long. I don't know how you're going to get it back in. It's going to be a lot of hard work, and there's going to be a lot of tough choices to make.
Ben, so good to hear from you. Thank you so much. Welcome to BC.
You bet. Thanks.
That's Ben in Fort St. John. Thank you so much for all of your calls. It is now 12:27, 1:27 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today. Great to hear from all of you when it comes to moving out of British Columbia. There will be lots more on that throughout the afternoon shows, by the way, in your region here on CBC Radio 1. It is a hot topic. And this afternoon On the Coast is on the air at 3 p.m. in Metro Vancouver. And here's what's coming up.
Michelle, hi there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I wanted to highlight a few things we've got lined up for On the Coast this afternoon. Now, you have probably heard a lot about Beyoncé's new album, Cowboy Carter, but did you know that Beyoncé was inspired by a handful of films as she wrote the album? Yeah, and one of them is a Western set in South Africa. So we are going to meet the screenwriter behind that film on the show this afternoon. Hear a little bit more about how he feels about the Beyoncé bump. Also, the women's NCAA basketball tournament. It has been breaking records for viewership, and the star players are also changing how much women can get paid to play basketball. So we'll talk more about growth in the sport ahead of the Final Four matches. That's all ahead on the Coast between 3 and 6.
Lots more, by the way. Thank you very much, Gloria, but lots more appetite on the topic of leaving Vancouver, leaving British Columbia. We have an email from Sandra. My daughter just graduated from UBC and has moved to Ontario. She is moving for job opportunities and the cost of living. I miss her. We connect with calls and texts, but I wonder what the distant future looks like. What does my future look like as I age, and how will our relationship change over the years? When I engage with people under 30, I talk to them about whether or not it is worth it for them to live in Vancouver. It's too bad we have lost our city for our kids. Sandra, thank you so much. And again, BC Today at cbc.ca. Now, we have an email once again on the topic of BC, British Columbians leaving the province to live elsewhere in the country. Suzanne wrote, I think that people are leaving because they can't afford to live here. If young people are not able to support themselves in the basic needs, then it is unsustainable. Housing has become a means for people to invest their money with little thought of the overall well-being of the population. I believe that limits should be placed on foreign ownership of housing. And that's Sarah writing us, BC Today at cbc.ca. And thanks so much for joining us here. You can listen live on Radio 1, watch us live on television, and live streaming as well. I'm Michelle Elliott. are chafer beetles getting to you? Are they really bugging you and your garden right now? Well, our gardening columnist Brian Minter is here with his advice on getting a handle on them. And as always, he's here to take your gardening questions. And so you can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. And Brian Minter joins us now from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Michelle. Great to be with you again. And Michelle, you're right. This whole issue of our lawns right now being totally dug up, they almost look like war zones. My goodness gracious, in some of the neighborhoods, and it's a serious concern for so many people. And there's a lot of information that maybe not be the best that people they're trying to get a control, but trying to do the right thing in terms of gardening as well. And Michelle, in talking to one of our retired entomologists for the Canadian government, he said that the long-term result in terms of a lawn is getting great diversity. The monoculture of just lawn is, I mean, they do play a valuable role in cooling our neighborhoods, producing oxygen, sequestering carbon. That's all important. But you can still do that with a diverse lawn. Clover is certainly one of those things, the micro clovers, the white Dutch clovers. People are starting to put wildflowers in your lawn. So as diverse as you can get it for longer term, and there's many other options as well. That's one thing you want to take a look at. But in terms of getting control, at this point here, there's two issues. Number one, the grubs are just there. They've always been there. There's new varieties and so on, like the European chafer and so on. But the problem is that they've been there since for a long period of time. Now they're becoming a little more aggressive. And it's not them that causing the problem. They're just lunch for all kinds of birds and raccoons and a lot of our local resident wildlife, and that's what's causing the problem. So an immediate situation is, and I see many people doing this, if you don't have a huge lawn, putting any type of cover over top, as in poultry wire or something that the predators can't dig up your lawn, just for that brief period while the grubs are active and hatching and so on. That's the thing to do, and that'll keep your lawn in great shape. And then roll it up and then carry on as you normally would. And a lot of folks it's being recommended nematodes. And, I had, when I was speaking at the Vancouver Farm and Garden Show, I had the occasion to meet some certified applicators in terms of looking after control. They are also looking after, things like a Japanese beetle and so on, and they have access to a lot of different things, and which are not available in their domestic market. But the one comment they did make consistently from a number of them, it's been recommended that nematodes are a control, and they're very frankly saying that nematodes, they had about a 95% failure rate using nematodes.
Oh, wow.
And so that was not working out very well, and that's what a lot of people I think are using. But in terms of diversity, that's one issue, getting control, and when you get control. This is really important. Now, in CBC, we don't recommend any particular products. We just discuss things. But the doctor I was talking to with the federal government entomologist, he said, BTK, and there's various forms of BTK, which is a bacteria, and might be one of the better options. And there is a product on the market. It's, it just to call a spade a spade. It's a Scott's Grub Control. It is BTK. And of course, BTK is very safe for the environment. And it again has been talking to various people in various situations, it has been probably the most effective, but it's not effective right now. What you have to do with it, this is a bacterial spray, very safe for us and very safe for all natural predators and worms and everything else. But the thing is, it's applied only when the temperatures are in the 10 degree to 18 degrees Celsius temperature range. And that would sound like late summer, early fall as the best application. And we're also finding that to get effective control, 2 applications about a week to 10 days apart, and late July And I would say early August would be a time to be able to do that in terms of making sure that you have bacteria in the soil that was going to control the grubs at the various life stages that they're in. That has been working in many neighborhoods, and people are finding great success. So it is an environmental control that's effective, and again, organic as we can possibly get in that situation. So it's something we just may want to look at in terms of how we're going to deal with this issue, because it is getting worse, and we need to have control. So in the meantime, if you do have a lawn, you'll have to find some way to keep the predators from digging them up at that one time when they're hatching. And by using diverse types of things in your lawn is the longer range control in terms of overseeding a lawn with the different types of plants, including the clovers. But essentially prevent them from that chewing up, digging up period, but getting control where you don't have the grubs as much anymore, or such a small number in your soil that it isn't becoming a problem. So that seems to be a very effective control. Not fast, not easy. We're not going to deal with this until later in the summer, but it is a control that seems to be working. And people are just, throwing at their hands saying, I don't know what to do.
Right.
It's just bad and there's no control. Well, there is a control. And but now we can aim towards being as organic as we can, being wise as we can, and keeping all the benefits of lawns that make such a difference in our neighborhoods when it's very hot and cooling. So there's some things I think that really might be of value to a great number of people, Michelle.
Okay, the immediate solutions and the long-term solutions as well. I know the number of times we get calls about chafer beetles on this program. Brian Minter is with us, and he's taking your gardening questions on the open line here on BC Today. Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And Brian is calling us from Tawasin. You're calling about a squirrel problem, Brian. Hi, Brian.
Yes.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is, I planted the bulbs, new bulbs in the fall in a planter for deterrent because of a squirrel issue. I also put pepper flakes there as well as coffee grounds throughout the winter.
These are for your tulips.
Have not emerged.
Okay, Brian, anything in a planter and even in the gardens right now, I mean, squirrels are becoming notorious. They're outsmarting the scientists. I mean, in terms of they're pretty clever. The same solution is working very well. We actually had to do this in certain areas in our gardens for many years. Once we planted in those areas, we put a very fine mesh poultry wire over top and just left them where they can't get in and dig. That solves the problem immediately. And in many cases, the leaves will go right through the wire and still they'll bloom and perform well. But the point is you need to put some sort of wire mesh. In some cases, there's actually a container in which you can plant bulbs. It's a plastic container. The roots go through, the bulbs go through, but it is protected from the squirrels getting in and digging. So, but it seems it's much easier, much less expensive, and much more effective just to use a poultry wire once the bulbs are planted right around them, and you'll be absolutely okay. And you will really annoy the squirrels.
They're pretty sly, aren't they? But
They are very sly, yeah.
And did the coffee grounds do anything to prevent the bulbs from blooming?
I learned over the years, and all the CBC listeners, you never ever discount anything, because if they've tried it and had success and so on. But to be honest with you, in this situation, you're going to have to use a wire protective covering to, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's safe and environmentally friendly.
There you go. Yeah, your DIY may not have been effective enough, Brian. Thank you so much for the call from Tawasin. And Victoria is calling us now from Vancouver. Hi, Victoria. Thanks so much for calling.
Oh, thank you. I have questions with respect to what's happened over the winter, and I was just wondering if I could get a little guidance from our guru. My Lithodora, zero response this spring, and I usually have beautiful ground cover blankets of it. I just don't know if I should cut it back or be patient. I'm just struggling because it's so dear and missed.
Oh.
Yeah, Victoria, I couldn't agree with you more. And you mentioned one word that we all need to pay attention to, and that is patience. We have not had warm weather yet. And once we get some consistent warm weather, you'll find that a lot of things we think are not going to make it. We'll suddenly see some new growth coming up below, but we need that hot weather to determine the amount of damage and how much plants are damaged. And then we can go back and do a pruning, or in some cases have to take them out and replace them. But we have to remember too that, gosh, it was an extreme situation. We were plus 10 or in that range. And in the Eastern Valley, we went down to minus 25 with the wind chill. That remarkable drop in temperature has done so much damage for so many plants. But, if we're just patient, watch even in rhododendrons and azaleas and so many of our beautiful plants where the new growth will come once the plant starts to come back again. And then we can go and prune, and we know how far or how much damage has been done. So a little bit more patience and watch the warm temperatures. And I'd say another 2-3 weeks, Victoria, to give you a sense of how bad that damage is. And I empathize with you. I love Lithodora. It is just such a beautiful plant. Beautiful. But it is, but it's a little tender as well.
Would that also apply to the Himalayan sweet box? Because mine, and I walk the neighborhood, and it seems everyone's in the neighborhood just decimated.
Never ever saw that before on Sarcococa. Absolutely. And in the valley or whatever, but again, most of them are recovering. The leaves are brown and look absolutely horrible. So when you see new growth starting, which will be soon now, then we'll prune them back, and most of them will be absolutely fine, Victoria.
I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Victoria, thanks for the call. A little bit more of a wait for you. Good to hear from you in Vancouver. Let's head to Kelowna now, and Dave has a question for gardening guru Brian Minter. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Great, Dave. Thank you.
Good. I got a lawn question. This is the third year I've had to top dress my lawn and seed it. Because of snow mold, or it's really...
Hi, Dave. Go ahead.
Slow start once again.
It's got a slow start. Okay, so you're trying to get your lawn going this year.
Yeah. Dave, in your area, snow mold is a problem. There's no question. I understand that. The best solution, and by the way, we used to have fungal controls in the domestic market for a lot of this disease. We don't anymore. All we have left is garden sulfur, which in some cases will help to some degree. But the secret in the areas, and we do this a lot in the valley here, but is aeration and sand. If you can aerate the areas that are bad, get the cores of soil out, get some no more than about 1/4 of an inch of sand in those areas, broadcast it. That opens the soil, gets more air and oxygen in the soil, and boy, that goes a long way to making a difference in terms of that. And then the other thing too is if you want to use, not that sulfur is the best control, but it doesn't hurt in terms of it's a very safe fungicide in terms of being able to use that. But it's aeration and sand, and again, perhaps a bit of sulfur as a fungal control. And then basically you're doing the right thing for overseeding. But when I overseed, I usually take a little bit of peat and sand, no more than about 1/4 inch, mix it together, broadcast it over top, and I throw my seed over top of that. I think you're about 2 weeks away from doing that in Kelowna, but no, that's what I would do. And there, other than aeration and sand, it is over time a very effective control.
Okay, Dave, good luck to you. And I hope you get that lawn going with those tips. Thanks for the call. If you want to get your question in to Brian Minter, you can dial us up, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca, or you can also text us at 236-330-2623. Eric actually sent us an email that's kind of related to what you were talking about earlier, Brian. Eric writes, some kind of beetle is eating my viburnum and even unimus bushes, not my lawn. Any ideas? Nematodes cost me a fortune. And as you said, Brian, did nothing.
Yeah, where you can, if you can, these are insects which are controllable, and nematodes, you have to know when to put them on. It's got to be warm, and they have to be effective. But these are insects that crawl up the stems and go in. They come out of the ground. and they go up the trees. Wherever you can, by far the most effective is putting masking tape around the stems of your plants and putting a sticky substance. So there's many different types of material you can use out there around the masking tape. Any type of natural barrier for insects going up the trees is by far, keep them out of the leaves. If it's up against the house, it's a little tough to do, but these they are a form of beetle. That really causes a lot of damage and problems. And on the euonymus is tough because euonymus has just so many thick leaves on them. But again, the recommended control is nematodes, and I know it's challenging in terms of using them. But for the leaf miters and the other insects that are going and chewing the leaves, it is by far the most effective thing. But again, it's a tough one. It is difficult.
Tough one, Eric, but good luck to you. I hope that does work out. Thanks for the email, bctoday@cbc.ca. Let's go back to our callers now, and Kim is on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Kim. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. Brian, I'm late to the gardening party this year, so I fear that you may already have answered my question and I missed it. But here it is. I've got lots of weird winter damage on the leaves on broadleaf evergreens in my garden, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on and what I need to do. So I'm thinking of like camellias and a Portuguese laurel, even some English laurel, epimediums, rhodos, and it's not consistent. It's so weird because plants that were really exposed are fine. Other plants that were kind of protected are not fine. And some of them, it just looks like the leaves are really brown and really leathery. And I've been, out there looking for signs of new growth. But that said, everything in my garden, and I live in Point Grey, everything is so late. So, like, roses are just kind of showing, lively buds now. They're not even really opened up. So I don't know if I should be picking off these brown bits or just trying to be more patient and waiting, or should I just break them off or break off those little cut the little branches?
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
No, all good questions. They really are. And all our broadleaf plants have been very, very challenged in terms of weather situations. The incredible hot sun that we get in the summertime has caused damage on many leaves. But to be very frank with you, it was the winter cold that we had in mid to late January that really did the damage, and especially in the Point Grey area. Again, because it's a broadleaf, it's not an evergreen, and no matter how the wind hits, and remember too, a lot of plants in terms of their hardiness, on rhododendrons, for example, there are H1, H2, H3 varieties. The H3s are very soft and tender, where the H1s and 2s are fine. So it'll depend location, how the wind wrapped around it hit them, and so it's winter damage or weather damage from the summer relating into the fall, and the winter damage we saw so much in January. So bottom line is, hang on. We don't know what's going to happen until we get warm weather. The warm weather will determine where the life points on the plant. But you're right, the English laurels in particular were damaged. The Portuguese laurels were damaged. Certainly rhodos and azaleas, camellias especially, were damaged this year. But in Point Grey, you're going to be fine with all of them. It's just a question of when the weather comes, watch for the new growth to come, and then at that point, you'll know where to prune and how much and how hard you have to prune to get them cleaned up. But in most cases, those leaves will fall off and be replaced by brand new growth that's going to look absolutely great. So in Point Grey, I think you're very lucky in terms of the minimal damage. In the Eastern Valley, it was very serious. So, it's going to be okay. I would say by July, you probably won't even know this is the problem.
So I hear you
Honestly.
saying sit tight until
Right.
until then.
Please.
Yeah. Watch for the new growth.
Yes.
Yep, and the warm weather is the best thing can happen to us to determine how soon those plants are going to flush out with new growth. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Kim, thank you
good
very
luck.
much. Good luck with your camellia conundrum. I came up with that when I was listening to you. Brian, and that's Kim in Point Grey. Dev is up next in Delta. Hi, Dev. You wanted to ask more about beetle grubs.
Yeah, hi, it's Doug.
Doug, my
Hi, Doug.
apologies. Yes, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, thanks, Brian. Yeah, sorry if I missed it, but I just wanted to clarify. You said the best time to apply is between 10 to 18 degrees, but then you mentioned like July, August.
That's
usually
right.
Usually we're in the 20s there. The last few summers we've been having like 25s even. But two questions, I guess. Wouldn't spring work, or would it be late fall?
Too late. Too late. You want to get them, and here's the situation here too. Most of the grubs lay their eggs in the fall, late summer going to September. We always used to say that October 15th was about the last time they would start laying their eggs and so on. But in terms of listening to folks in terms of the timing and when they're getting control, and you're quite right, it could be a lot hotter than 10 to 18 degrees, but that seems to be the optimum time to put this bacteria in the ground. It will stay there. It'll keep working. And but if you want to put in a little bit later, going into September, it's very logical that would be a good time to do that. That's a very good question, Doug. But in that temperature range, but the BTK, this bacteria, is by far seeming to be the most effective.
Okay, I don't know if you've heard of the difference between the ones you can get in the States, the Scotsby grub, Scotsby gun versus the BTK that's here. Apparently it's a stronger formulation. I don't know if you've heard any difference there. Like, I live right on the border, so we can go to Point Roberts.
Right.
And, blame anybody living along the border. Apparently it's a different formulation. I haven't checked the actual active ingredients, so I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah, good point. We have perhaps a lot more strict regulations in British Columbia. Pest control is a provincial situation. So, but again, the folks are all British Columbians living in all through the valley that I've spoken with, and this is how they're getting control. They're in whole neighborhoods where they're working, having great success, and so I'm just passing on the information, Doug. Great question.
No, for sure.
Okay.
Just last question. Temperature-wise, if it's like in June, if it's 10 to 18, that's too soon. It's better to
it is too soon.
The timing of the emergence of the grubs, right?
That's right, because they'll stay their eggs in the late summer going into fall, and that's when that's going to be most effective. Absolutely. Good point. Yeah.
That is a good point. I'm glad you called in, Doug, because then just to get a more precise timing for when you can put that in. Good luck to you, and thanks for the clarification as well on what kind of BTK you can use. Yes, exactly. And Brian, I have one quick email question here. Let's see. Michelle writes about a mock orange planted 3 years ago. It gets full sun, growing well, very healthy, but it has not bloomed yet. Can she do anything to help it go along?
Yeah, good point. And to be very frank, Michelle, mock orange has driven our listeners on CBC crazy for, as long as I've been here.
Mockingly.
Right? Seriously. Yeah, that too. Three things. Don't prune your mock orange. Let them bloom first and then prune at that time. But I think because there's so many different varieties, there really are. But if it's a stubborn bloomer, we always recommend something like a 10, 15, 19 fertilizer with micronutrients in it. That gets applied when the leaves first come out. And again, 12 weeks later, gosh, that is really good. It really encourages the plant to bloom. Often pruning, I talked to a gentleman yesterday in a similar situation. His hydrangea never blooms. And I said, tell me when you prune. So he pruned in the spring, pruning off all the blooms. So no pruning, leave the mock orange alone and feed them now as soon as the leaves come out, but they're starting to come out now with the 10, 15, 19, and that will really help to get your bloom. But pruning is an issue as well. Hands off on the pruning on mock orange. I'm sorry.
Hands off for now. Michelle, thank you. And Brian, what a pleasure as always. Thanks so much.
It's so fun. And thank you for all the wonderful listeners for joining us every week. They're
amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Brian Minter from Country Minter Garden in Chilliwack. This is BC Today. Our email again, bctoday@cbc.ca.